the game instead of making that cringe talk. Anyway, let's get started. Alright, so we have upcoming balance changes. Update 9.1. They are changing 5 cards total. Innervate, Fireworks, Hex, Murloc War Leader, and Spreading Plague. This is actually more changes than I expected. But I'm happily surprised, I should say. Happily surprised by the fact that they're not just targeting Druid only when there's other broken stuff in the game that's problematic. Alright, anyway, this is the nerf that I've been calling for since I started Hearthstone, basically, in closed beta. And I'm surprised that it lasted so long. I guess it took it took until Druid was like really over the top for them to finally hit this card. I'm happy that they changed this card because the fact that this card is in the game meant that if Druid gets anything even slightly good, it becomes even more broken due to the fact that they get to play it sooner. Like cards that are even normally average, I should say, like Vicious Fledgling, became broken because of this and being able to cheat them out like before your opponent can answer it with their removal or whatever. So yeah, it feels amazing, man. This was super mega problematic. Let's get the chat on the screen. There we go. I don't know if you can read the white text, but can't really adjust that. But yeah. Innervate is definitely the correct Druid card to nerf. Like, I'm glad that they stopped giving the class identity argument or whatever on these like staple sort of cards and started changing them instead. Also, they said that, what did they say? Alright, after careful consideration, we chose to make changes to 3 basic class cards. Too many basic class cards played in individual decks means less fun when new expansions are released. So this was the biggest reason for me for them to change like basic and classic cards. The fact that there's so many auto includes that have been played in every single deck since Hearthstone's inception just gives you less room to play around with new cards that they print, because the new cards can't really compete with the old cards that have always been broken since the start of Hearthstone. So I hope that they keep going like further towards this direction of hitting the sort of old cards that we've seen around forever. I think it'll make decks more interesting. Like if the decks are shifting around and changing every sort of expansion, we can play more new cards in our decks, so that's great. Glad that they're working towards that. That's what I've been calling for forever, by the way, since closed beta. So yeah, they said these were the few of the options that they considered. They basically changed Innervate to a coin, which is kind of questionable. I would have liked to see it be sort of different from just a coin, but I get that they're trying to keep it simple since it's a basic card. If it was me, I probably would have chosen something along the lines of this last option. The nerf I was calling for was making it cost 3 and add 5 crystals, so you can still use it to gain 2, but you can't use it in like the super early turns like turn 1 and 2. And it makes it less flexible as well. So I would have preferred if they went with that option, but I think the way they changed it is fine. No longer auto-include in every Druid deck. Now you have to decide whether you want extra coins in your deck. I'm sure there'll be a druid deck at some point that wants to make use of coins. Maybe not now, but maybe in the future. Yep. So we will see. Like, it's not as good as coin is in Rogue, because Rogue has combo. But I think it might still be decent in the future. And, what else can we say about this card? Hallelujah, I suppose. Alright, Fiery War Axe. From 2 mana to 3 mana. Oh yeah, I should also mention that Counterfeit Coin is an expansion card. So this card isn't really always competing with Coin, really. Because this is a basic card, so it'll always be in the game, whereas Counterfeit Coin will rotate out at some point. So it's fine. Anyway, Fiery War Axe. I'm really happy about this one also, even though apparently this card being nerfed caused a lot of outrage on Reddit, especially because Fibonacci like tweeted about it. But honestly, how can you defend this card on the left? Like, this card on the left is completely and blatantly OP, and the win rate as any warrior deck when you have Fiery War Axe in your opening hand is just like through the roof versus when you don't. I don't think Hearthstone should have cards like that, where your win rate just skyrockets when you draw a particular card in your opening hand. Like, that's just poor design, honestly. Cards shouldn't be that powerful. It was the same with Innervate, right? Like, games where you had Innervate in your opening hand, your win rate just skyrockets most of the time. So yeah, like, sure, the 3 mana War Axe is strictly worse than some other weapons, is the argument people are making, like Eagle Horn Bow, King's Defender, what have you. The thing is, like, Warrior would have played King's Defender when that was a card if it didn't have to compete with the OP Fiery War Axe. Hunter plays Eagle Horn Bow at 3 mana with 0 secrets. So, like, 3 mana War Axe isn't terrible. It's just not auto-include anymore. Like, I'm sure the 3-cost War Axe will still see play at some point. If Warrior wants more weapons, maybe even Pirate Warrior will still play it. Pirate Warrior, okay. Pirate Warrior did need a nerf for sure. You could argue that control decks take splash damage from this being nerfed, but I think that's fine. It opens up more room for, like I said, open up more room for other cards to see play and other weapons to be printed, because you no longer have to really directly compare the weapon to Fiery War Axe. And most of the time when you did that, the weapon ended up being worse than War Axe. Other than, like, the only weapon that was ever better than War Axe was Deathbite, but yeah, that card was even more overpowered than 2-cost Fiery War Axe. So yeah, I think this change is fine. They could have made the change more elegant, but I get why they did it. They wanted to keep it simple. Like, they didn't really want to add text to the cards, so the only thing they could do at that point was shift around the numbers on it. They said they like to change mana cost more than what the card actually does, because you can see the mana cost clearly in your hands, while you might forget about the text being changed. So yeah, I think this is a fine change. It'll probably still see play in certain decks, but no longer 2 of in majority of warrior decks moving forward. Also, some warrior decks are even cutting a War Axe at times. Like, when you have other weapons that you want to play, like Patron back in the day, some people played 1 War Axe. Even like the new Dead Man's Hand warriors, sometimes people play 1 War X in that too. But yeah. Outside of that, this was mostly just a 2 of in every single warrior deck since the beginning of time. So nerfing this opens up design space for other weapons, other cards to be put in warrior decks and messed around with. And it also reduces like the mulligan win rate variance. Is that a good thing to call it? Yeah, I guess. Mulligan win rate variance. So basically, like, win rates drawing the axe and not drawing the axe were so far apart that it's not really balanced. Why isn't deadly poison as much of an issue? Because deadly poison is not a 2-cost weapon. Like, you pay 3 to get the dagger plus the poison. It's a bit different. Also, warrior has life gains, so weapons are just better in warrior because they synergize with being able to armor up and mitigate the damage that you take from face tanking stuff, right? So for that, like, if priest had weapons also, they would be even more broken in priest than they are in other classes. But yeah, that's the main reason that's the main reason weapons are generally worse in rogue, is because warrior has no way to gain life. So you're trading life as a resource for killing minions, and rogue is just worse at that, whereas warrior is arguably the best at that. But yeah, I played so many hunter decks with 3-cost eagle horn bows, which were basically a strictly worse fire war axe. So honestly, if anyone is complaining about this nerf, like, just know I don't want to hear it. Like, I've played my 3-mana eagle horn bows that were strictly worse than war axe for so long. I don't want to hear about your complaints about this nerf. Alright, the next nerf is Hex going to 4 mana. A lot of people were confused about this because this isn't even a card that sees play right now, but this is actually another change that I asked for since I started Hearthstone, because when you compare it to Polymorph, it didn't really make sense that Shaman just gets effectively a strictly better version of the same card, especially when Mage is also a class that's about having powerful spells. So yeah, while this change might not be necessary now, it's kind of future-proofing the removal and the class as a whole. It opens up more space for decks to be able to play cool, powerful legendary minions and not be weakened too much by this level of broken OP removal. Like, sure, the current Shaman deck doesn't play this, but a lot of Shaman decks in the past have. It's been a very good card, and it will continue to be a good card in the future, even at 4 mana, I think. Yeah, 3 mana, you're effectively silencing the minion and destroying it. That's like a bit too powerful of an effect at 3, so I'm fine with this going to 4. But yeah, anyway, it's not a change that anyone, myself included, expected, but I'm not really against this change. Again, you want to reduce the amount of auto-include sort of classic cards to open up more room for future cards and expansions to see play. Why did the card go from 2 lines of text to 3? Oh yeah. That is odd. I actually think it looked better with only the 2 lines of text. They're like centering it here. I wonder why they did that actually. We'd have to look at some other cards to see if they follow this sort of layout. Also, as a hunter player, I'm happy about this. Like, so many times, my Savannah high mains were getting hexed, which was super annoying. So I'm happy about that as a hunter player. Even though 4 mana hex is probably still fine for a more controller type shaman. Anyway, Murloc War Leader. This is also another change that makes a lot of sense. Especially if you compare it to the pirate sort of tribal leader that they have, the South Sea Captain. It gave your pirates +1/+1, whereas this one gave your Murlocs +2/+1. So it's like, wait, why did the Murlocs get 1 extra stat than the pirates do? So yeah, they changed it to give 2 attack, which is more in line with the pirate sort of leader. But yeah, Murloc decks are pretty insanely good at the moment. Like, the Murloc Paladin win rate at times this expansion has been the highest win rate of all the decks, even above Jade Druid. So it makes sense if they're nerfing Druid, they should also sort of nerf the other 2 classes that are dominant in terms of win rates across all the ranks, which were Pirate Warrior and Murloc Paladin. If you just nerf Druid's Innervate, where like, and you're like leaving the aggro decks this powerful, you're not really gonna fix much, because the aggro decks are just gonna be even more dominant and just take the current slot that Jade Druid is sort of filling in. So yeah, I like this change overall. It makes Murlocs less snowbally, easier to deal with. The 1 health like enabled them to take easy value trades on your minions and just make it impossible to clear board. But yeah, I think this card is still playable post nerf as well. Like, I think Murloc Paladin is still a good deck despite this. So I like that they didn't completely kill the card and they left it in a place where it's still playable but not broken. Do I think Murloc Paladin will transition into a more aggressive strategy, or mid-range Murloc Paladin stick around? I think the decks will be largely the same, just slightly less snowballing, easier to deal with. Their 1-2-3 curve, like the 1-2-3 curve for Murlocs currently is like way too powerful in my opinion. Like, if they open with Vilefin into Rockpool into War Leader, it's like impossible to deal with for a lot of decks. So those minions having 1 less health will make it easier to respond to the Murloc God draws. So I like this change a lot. It doesn't really decrease the damage output or anything that the Murloc deck can do early. It just decreases how hard it is to deal with their boards, which is a good thing. Alright, Spreading Plague from 5 mana to 6 mana. So this card effectively made it so Jade Druid is no longer extremely weak against aggro decks as it was before. And since Jade Druid was already dominating control decks, giving them an answer that basically shuts down classes like Hunter with only 1 card for only 5 mana was like completely and utterly broken. Like, if you calculate the amounts of life and like board stall potential this card gives you, it was just ridiculous at 5. I think it's probably even still good at 6. Like, you might at 6 you might only play it as a 1-of, because it gets a bit more clunky, but giving aggro an extra turn to sort of or even mid-range decks, giving them an extra turn to sort of set up on the board and not get shut down by this card is pretty good for the overall balance of the game, in my opinion. Like, Jade Druid should be more of an anti-control deck and less of like being able to just beat every deck in the game. So yeah, this card is definitely one that I could see changing. I wasn't sure if they would change this one or the Ultimate Infestation, but I like this change. Also, this change helps classes that were trying to go wide on the board, like Token Shaman, Hunter, even Murloc Paladin sometimes. Like, this card is actually the main reason Hunter just auto loses to Jade Druid most of the time, as well as being problematic for Token Shaman unless they can like devolve it and push somehow. So yeah, I like this change. It makes a lot of decks that were hindered more playable now, so I'm looking forward to trying out more Shaman Hunter builds after this nerf and the Innervate nerf hits. Is Jade anti-control now with the Geist thing existing? I mean, Jade still beats control decks that run Geist, despite Geist existing, just because curving out with Jades is so powerful that often, even if they have Geist on curve, it doesn't matter because your boards are so resilient. But yeah, that's another issue. Anyway, so a lot of people are saying Druid will still be broken. It's hard to say now without testing. Like, okay, the argument people are making is that Druid will still be broken because they nerfed a couple cards that aggro classes are playing, like War Leader and War Axe, but we have to remember that Innervate was the best card in Druid against aggressive decks. Being able to get the early tempo and not just fall completely far behind. So it's actually hard to say. Like, Druid might be weak now. I'm not gonna make that call though, because like the core, like the rest of the core of Druid is still pretty strong, but I think people underestimate how big of a tempo advantage Innervate provided for Druids against aggressive decks and even mid-range decks and even control decks sometimes. So yeah, we will have to see. It's honestly like the meta is going to shift quite a bit from these changes. It's hard to say what's going to be good now. It's really hard to say. Like, they effectively changed 4 decks, maybe even more. If we're assuming other warrior decks are actually playable other than Pirate Warrior, they effectively changed Jade Druid, Aggro Druid, Murloc Paladin, Pirate Warrior, I guess Control / Taunt Warrior. So yeah, 5 or 6 decks power levels is now adjusted. So it's going to be hard to say how the meta like corrects itself from here. But alright, now I want to talk about biggest gainers and biggest losers. Alright, how do I change the font or font size? Wait, I'll move this as well. There you go. Alright, so the obvious one in terms of biggest gainers is probably Kazakus Priest. It's already one of the most powerful decks right now. And if you look at the matchup charts, Kazakus Priest was weak against Jade Druid, Pirate Warrior, Murloc Paladin. So you're effectively nerfing 3 of the decks that Kazakus Priest was slightly weak against. I wouldn't say it's like super weak against those decks, but it was definitely at a slight disadvantage in those matchups. So yeah, Kazakus Priest gains a lot from these nerfs, but there are other counters that could come into the meta because of the nerfs, potentially. Like, if Priest becomes like the most popular deck, then people will start playing Taunt Warrior again, because Sulfuras is like the ultimate counter to Priest. You can finish as Taunt Warrior, you can finish your quest generally before they get Raza plus Anduin set up, and then just start dealing 8 damage a turn to their face because they don't have a lot of minions to tank the shots of it. So if Priest does become more popular, I would expect Taunt Warrior and maybe what else counters actually? Yeah, those sort of decks to come back. Actually, Hunter is potentially another big gainer. Because all the decks that are all the decks that are getting nerfed, including Jade Warrior, Murloc Paladin, and Pirate Warrior, were all bad matchups for Hunter. I'm not gonna call like Hunter being good right now, but it has potential because all 3 of these were bad matchups for it. So yeah, indeed, Hunter does have no place to go but up. Like, Hunter lost nothing, whereas these 3 decks lost a decent amount. And also Hunter can do well against Priest, especially with the Death Knight. And just like the sticky Death Rattle sort of minions that they can't deal with. Stuff like Bear Shark, Priest has trouble killing. Oh yeah, the War Axe nerf also makes Bear Shark a better card. Because Bear Shark was pretty weak to weapons, since it's just a 4/3. And weapons don't care about spell immunity. So yeah, Hunter has a lot of potential actually. Oh yeah, Aggro Druid is the other one I forgot. Aggro Druid losing Innervate is even more devastating than Jade Druid losing Innervate, because you can no longer Innervate Fledgling turn 1 or do stupid broken plays like that. Like, Innervate was arguably even more busted in Aggro Druid than it is in slower sort of Druid decks, due to the tempo advantage, which put you further ahead against other aggressive decks. The reason that Zoo and those sort of decks stop seeing play is other decks just like being able to get bored easier early on, due to cards like Innervate, due to cards like Fiery War Axe. I still think Zoo probably doesn't have strong enough cards to compete with the meta decks, but oops, it does gain a little bit. Maybe Zoo. Another big gainer is Token Shaman. Due to the nerf to Spreading Plague, Token Shaman really struggled with Spreading Plague, and also just Innervate plays like Innervate, Primordial Drake or whatever, plays like that were really devastating for Token Shaman. Of course, Token Shaman doesn't care at all about the Hex nerf either, so it's good that that's not affecting it. Right, any decks that we're missing for biggest losers? Not that I can think of, really. Control Warrior is probably still gonna suck, if I had to say. Like, Control Warrior was not good, even with 2 Mana War Axe. It's gonna be worse with 3 Mana War Axe. You didn't hear about the update changes, can you mention what they are? Here are the changes. Innervate to 1 crystal, Fire War Axe to 3 mana, Hex to 4 mana. War Leader no longer gives a health buff, and Spreading Plague to 6 mana. Those are the changes. Innervate and Zvorax existed for 2 years of Zoo dominance. There must be something else to that. I mean, the thing is, Zoo had more powerful minions back then. Like your stuff like Imp Gang Boss and Dark Peddler and what have you, and let's see, stuff like Mage actually counters Zoo. Stuff like Zoo used to be good against mid-range Druid, but Zoo isn't good against Jade Druid anymore. Zoo lost Pio. Yeah, Pio was huge. Stuff like Nerubian Egg, Haunted Creeper had in the past. Zoo just doesn't really have the sticky board presence that it used to. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, Zoo could develop a board much easier than it can now. Are these minor tweaks enough to bring Zoo back? Most likely not. Just because I think its cards are not inherently powerful enough. That's why we just said maybe. It's not really a biggest gainer, it's just like a slightly better, but still probably bad. Another thing that hurt Zoo was the addition of cheap AoEs. And also decks that could run patches. Because Zoo can't really run patches super well because it's not a weapon class. So it can't run like First Mate. So you're forced to play in the Corsair, which is like alright, but not amazing. But yeah, cards like Maelstrom Portal and Volcanic Potion, those sort of things really hurt Zoo. Yeah, we could probably actually delete that one, the more I think about it. Yeah, I was gonna get around to that. I think another big gainer is Quest Mage. So, Quest Mage has sort of been like extremely weak to any sort of aggressive decks, like Part Warrior, like Murloc Paladin, like Aggro Druid. Pirate Warrior was probably the worst. Like, the Quest Mage versus Pirate Warrior matchup is like 15% win rate or something. Not even exaggerating. Like, that's close to the actual stat, I'm pretty sure. Maybe like 20%. So, yeah. If aggro decks are seeing less play, then Quest Mage can come in and destroy the Kazakus priests that are gaining a lot of ground. I actually don't like the fact that Quest Mage could potentially be good though. Like, it's one of the decks I just hate playing against. Cause when they're able to set up their combo, you just feel helpless. It's just not fun. It's not fun to play against. Did Tempo Rogue gain enough room to be viable? It's unlikely. I don't think the class has enough going for it in terms of raw power level of their cards. Quest Mage and any priest decks are pure cancer and unfun. I don't mind priest that much, but I can agree there with Quest Mage. There could be some other big gainers that I'm not thinking of that could come back just because of the way the meta shifts, but it's hard to predict. It's hard to know. Like, I'm sure people are still gonna try to make Jade Druid work despite the nerfs, and it'll probably still be a high tier deck, but will it be the best deck anymore? I don't really think so. Unless Blizzard just didn't test these changes at all. I'm actually slightly worried that they didn't really test these changes that much, partially due to how fast that they are implementing these nerfs or decided to change stuff. So we will see. Overall, I'm happy. Yay. Yeah, I'm always happy when they make balance changes, even if they're not 100% optimal or what I expected or hoped for. Personally, I just like it when they make use of the fact that it's a digital game and they can just freely adjust the cards. Personally, I would like to see them do that even more often than they do now, but I know they have their reasons for not. Particularly, like, because of the outrage on Reddit right now. Due to some people not agreeing with the way they changed the cards or whatever. I think you just have to take a step back and try and be grateful that Blizzard is actually trying to at least listen to the community a little bit and improve the gameplay experience for everyone. Like, that's why I don't understand why people are getting upset over the changes. Like, you should be grateful that they're actually attempting to do anything rather than just making us play Druidstone for the next 3 months or whatever. Yeah. Does it bother you that they don't do more to boost up never used cards? Nerfing OP cards is generally easier to do than buffing underplayed cards, and they don't really like changing cards unless they really need to be changed. Even some cards that are never used could potentially see gains from like future cards that are released that happen to synergize with those so-called never used cards. So Yeah, I don't really think it's super necessary to buff. Yeah, I don't think it's super necessary to buff underutilized cards because they could always potentially see some sort of play in the future. They're finally nerfing Innovate Law. Yep. That was the nerf that I hoped for more than any nerf ever in the history of Hearthstone, and they're finally doing it. So, that's pretty sweet. I think they could revert nerfs though, like there were some nerfs that happened in the past that in today's standard of cards don't really make any sense. Like I think if Argent Commander was still a 4/3, it'd be perfectly fine. I think Call of the Mana at 8 was fine. I think Starving Buzzard was over nerfed, like 5 mana 3/2. There, like with Unleash the Hounds, they first nerfed it to 4 mana and then they buffed it to 3. Like I'd like to see them fine tune the balance changes sometimes instead of just nerfing something into oblivion. I like when cards like say Unleash the Hounds right now, it's not an auto include card, it's meta dependent. At 3 mana, it's perfectly fair and balanced. Whereas at 4 mana, it's just unplayable garbage, you're not gonna touch it. So I like to see them sort of adjust cards into a state where they're like playable but not auto include. I think having non-auto include cards is like the definition of good design because it means you have choices in deck building. Like you don't just browse through the cards and say like, oh wait, my Hearthstone's closed. You don't just browse through the cards and say, oh, this one's OP, add it. This one's OP, add it. This one's OP, add it. And then you end up having like half your deck full of auto includes and the room left for innovation starts to become really small. So yeah, I like when cards are just playable but not broken. They practically removed the charge mechanic. They said they were shifting charge to more of a mechanic where